Welcome back, guys. So in this React cheat sheet series, we will have a look at useReducer. So what is useReducer? useReducer is basically a hook that let you manage complex state in functional components, and it also lets you to optimize the performance as well, and it uses the reduct pattern. So now we have the button here, right? And when I click on this button, the number increases, and if I click on this, it decreases. Okay, so let's have a look at the code. And first we need to import useReducer from React, and in the app component here we define count dispatch equal to useReducer. Okay, so here we have the state action, and the action here, okay, we are using switch case. So in the action, the first action is increment. So what does increment does? It basically increases the number every time that we call this action. Okay, and if the action decreases is called, this case, right, then it reduces it by 1, or it deducts it by 1. Otherwise it just throw an error. And down here, this is number 0. Basically, this is the default value. Okay, so the default value of the current state, right? Down here, we have the return, right? We have the two buttons. So the first button here, it is using dispatch. Dispatch is basically, it's called an action. Okay, it's basically start an action. So when we click on the button, then it calls this action and it start performing whatever that we defined in this case. Okay, so the first case here is the increment, right? And if say I click on this button instead, it will dispatch, it will start this action called decrement, and inside the decrement we reduce the number by 1. Okay, so now let's try to click on the button. So when I click on this, the number increased by 1 because we are calling this action. Okay, and if I click on this, then it reduced by 1, so on and so forth, right? So this is one form of using the useReducer. And now let me also show you the other way as well. So we need to write more code compared to this one. You can think of this as like the shortcut how you write using the useReducer. Okay, so let's have a look at another example. Okay, so this is one more example. As you can see, we have defined the initialized state count equal to 0, right? We assign number 0 to this. This is the initial state. And in the reducer here, this is a separate function. Okay, so we have the state, the same one, action, but in the switch we are using action.type. Okay, and then the case is basically returning the current state, right? State.count plus 1, and this is the case for the decrement. It reduced or deducted by 1. Okay, and otherwise the default would be showing the error. Okay, so if we don't call this, or if we don't call this, then it just throw the error. And in the app component here, so this is the old code, right? The previous code I show you. And here we have state, dispatch, useReducer, and we just call the reducer, basically the function, right? And the previous example here, we just define everything inside here. Okay, and then we also have the initial state. So it's similar to this one, right? It's just that we use the initial state, we defined it on top here equal to 0. If you don't want to write it like this, then you can just simply put number 0, basically the same one as this, right? The reducer here, we just split it into a separate function. And the difference here, we have the action.type. So this one here, we don't need to use the .type, right? And also the return, we don't even use the count, right? So this is the difference. This is another way you can write using the useReducer. And in the button, so the first one is the patch, and we use the type and then the name of it, which is the increment, and this is another type, decrement. So the code basically the same thing, right? It does the same job. So this is a little bit long form, right? We have to define the type, we have to use the action.type, we have to also here count. I think that's pretty much about the useReducer. And if you want to learn more about the useReducer or the Redux, you can also check out my other crash courses on this topic. Okay, until then, see you guys in the next video.